You wake up at a specific time. You go to a specific kind of building. You work for a specific number of hours. You come home, eat, sleep, and repeat. And somewhere along the way, you started calling that your life. But here's the thing nobody told you. The alarm time, the work hours, the house in the suburbs, the wedding ring, the career ladder, almost none of it was invented by you or for you. It was engineered by specific companies in specific decades for specific reasons. And today, we're going to show you the receipts. Before 1938, diamond engagement rings were rare. Most people couldn't afford them, and frankly, most people didn't expect them. Then a single advertising agency, N.W. Ayer, working for a mining company called De Beers, came up with 4 words. That slogan didn't just sell rings, it redefined what love was supposed to look like. Within 10 years, diamond engagement rings went from a luxury for the wealthy to a social expectation for everyone. If you've ever felt pressure or put pressure on someone around an engagement ring, you were feeling the echo of a 1938 marketing campaign designed to save a struggling mining industry. That's not romance, that's engineering. Henry Ford didn't invent the 8-hour workday because he cared about workers. He invented it because he discovered something surprising, that workers who worked 8 hours produced more than workers who worked 10 or 12. It was a productivity experiment, not a gift, not a right, an experiment that happened to benefit employees, so it stuck. But here's what's strange. That was 1914, over 100 years ago. The economy has completely transformed. Knowledge work, creativity, remote collaboration, none of that existed. And yet, most of the world still wakes up at the same time, works the same hours, and calls it normal. We took a factory schedule and applied it to everything, forever. After World War II, the US government faced a crisis. Millions of soldiers returning home with nowhere to live and a looming recession if the economy didn't shift from wartime production. The solution was Levittown. Mass-produced suburban housing, built fast, built cheap, sold with the help of government-backed mortgages that were specifically designed to make buying a home feel easier than renting. They didn't ask what people wanted. They built something, made it financially irresistible, and then told everyone this was the dream. The white picket fence, the 2-car garage, the lawn you mow on weekends. These weren't organic cultural ideals. They were an economic stimulus package dressed up as aspiration. 3 examples. 3 systems that billions of people live inside of right now, without ever knowing who built them or why. But knowing the architecture doesn't explain why we keep choosing to live in it. For that, you need to understand what's happening inside your brain. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Robert Cialdini documented something he called social proof, the idea that in uncertain situations, humans default to doing what everyone else is doing. It's not weakness, it's efficiency. For most of human history, copying the group kept you alive. The person who wandered away from the tribe to find themselves often got eaten. But there's a second mechanism that's even more powerful. Cialdini called it consistency bias. Once you've made a choice, or had a choice made for you, your brain works overtime to justify it. This is why people who grew up in houses defend home ownership, why people who went to university defend the degree system, why people who chose conventional careers defend conventional careers. It's not logic. It's your brain protecting its own decisions, even the ones it didn't actually make. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The scripts we inherit don't just shape what we do, they shape who we think we are. Sociologist Irving Goffman spent decades studying how humans perform identity, how we take on roles and then forget we're performing. The doctor doesn't just do doctoring, they become the doctor. The title, the coat, the parking space at the hospital, it's all part of a costume that eventually stops feeling like one. And the moment a role becomes identity, questioning it feels like an attack on the self. That's why telling someone that the 9-to-5 was invented for factory efficiency in 1914 doesn't make them want to work less, it makes them defensive. Because you're not questioning their schedule, you're questioning who they are. If the scripts we live by were natural, if they were just how humans are, you'd expect to find roughly the same scripts everywhere. But you don't. In Denmark, 6 weeks of paid parental leave for fathers isn't progressive, it's just Tuesday. In Japan, working yourself to exhaustion has a word, karoshi, meaning death by overwork. It's listed as an official cause of death. In the Netherlands, discussing your salary openly with colleagues isn't rude, it's encouraged because transparency prevents exploitation. These aren't weird edge cases. These are entire countries running on different scripts, proving that the one you're living isn't the only option. It's just the one that was handed to you first. So if the scripts are built, and our brains defend them, and entire countries prove they can be different, what do you actually do with that? Finland abolished homework for children under 7, not because they gave up on education, because the data showed it didn't improve outcomes. They rewrote the script and now consistently rank among the world's best education systems. Iceland ran a 4-day workweek trial from 2015 to 2019, covering 2,500 workers, over 1% of the entire working population. Productivity didn't fall. In most cases, it improved. The trial is now permanent for the majority of the country's workforce. New Zealand gave Jacinda Ardern's government credit for something unusual, explicitly naming well-being as a metric for economic success, not just GDP, measuring whether people were actually okay. None of these countries are utopias, but each made a deliberate choice to question a script that everyone else was running on autopilot. In 2019, a term started spreading online, the quiet quit. Millions of people weren't dramatically leaving their jobs or moving to farms. They were simply doing exactly what their contract said. No more, no less. The media called it laziness, but researchers called it something more interesting, a boundary recalibration. People who'd grown up being told that going above and beyond was the path to security and discovered it wasn't, deciding to stop auditioning for a role they'd never fully get. There are also the FIRE movement followers, financial independence, retire early, who identified that the 40-year career followed by retirement was invented at a time when people died at 65 and decided to run a different calculation. These aren't solutions for everyone, but they're evidence of something important. The moment you see the script as a script, you gain the ability to edit it. Bronnie Ware was a palliative care nurse who spent years sitting with people in the final weeks of their lives. She recorded their regrets. The most common one, said in almost identical words by person after person, was this: not, "I wish I'd worked harder," not, "I wish I'd made more money." The most common regret of the dying was that they'd spent their lives running a script they never chose and realized it too late to rewrite it. That's not a productivity problem. That's a visibility problem. The script was invisible. They couldn't edit what they couldn't see. So what do you do with all of this? Here's what we're not going to tell you. Quit your job, move to Bali, reject society. That's just a different script, one written by a different industry trying to sell you something else. What we're actually saying is simpler and harder. The diamond ring isn't evil. The career isn't a trap. The suburb isn't a lie. These things can genuinely make people happy. But there's a difference between choosing something because it fits your actual life and inheriting it because it arrived before you could ask questions. The question isn't whether to follow a script, it's whether you know you're following one. One more thing before you go. This video was designed to keep you watching. The hook, the 3-act structure, the emotional payoff at the end. The algorithm rewards videos that hold attention, so creators, including this one, build content specifically engineered to do that. You just watched 12 minutes of content about invisible systems, inside an invisible system. That's not a gotcha, it's actually the point. Every system is visible once you know to look, including this one, including the one you're living in right now. The only question left is, now that you can see it, what do you do with that?